December 5th, 1953. History gives us the official cause of death for Joseph Stalin, a cerebral hemorrhage. But the scene itself is, well, it's the perfect, chilling metaphor for his entire life. He's found on the floor of his dacha, unconscious. He'd been lying there for hours, completely alone. The man with absolute control died helpless, surrounded by a silence that he himself had created through terror.
It's an incredible historical irony, isn't it? The ultimate isolation of the tyrant. And while historians, they rightly focus on the huge legacy, the industrialization, World War II, the Great Purge, all of that, we're going to step away from the historical ledger for this deep dive.
We are. The source material we're looking at today takes us into the metaphysical realm. We're exploring a speculative journey into Stalin's eternal reckoning, a damnation that's, well, custom-tailored to the man.
And we should be clear, this isn't about a literal map of the afterlife. It's a narrative device. It's pulling from things like Dante's Inferno, from the idea of poetic justice, where the punishment fits the sin perfectly. The whole point is to see how literature can use a person's own psychology against them.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. What happens when a man whose entire life was defined by this relentless mechanical control? What happens when he's finally held accountable with no system left to manipulate?
Well, the source suggests there's no gentle transition, no light at the end of the tunnel. The moment of death is just this profound sense of spiritual gravity. The soul is just so heavy with everything he's done that it just falls. It falls until it lands in a place that perfectly mirrors its own internal state.
A descent shaped by his own deeds, a soul made of iron and suspicion just finding its own level.
Exactly. So he doesn't arrive in some generic fire and brimstone hell. His damnation is a reflection. It taps into these really old ideas.
Wait, you mentioned symbolic traditions in the sources. I saw things like the Kabbalistic Klupoth, Buddhist Naraka realms. For those of us who aren't familiar with that, how does that actually relate to Stalin? Is it like a shadow world?
That's a great way to put it. It's the idea that his hell isn't an external punishment. It's his own spiritual corruption made real, made manifest. The systems he used for power become the actual instruments of his torment.
And the setting itself is it's a prison of memory, of paperwork. He arrives in this vast underground archive.
The whole environment is designed to be suffocating. Endless gray filing cabinets, flickering bare bulbs, you can almost smell it, right? Damp earth, coal smoke, burnt paper, the smell of bureaucracy burning itself out, and the sounds are what get you. Muffled sobbing far off, and the groaning wheels of trains that are always arriving but never really going anywhere.
The absolute peak of control without any humanity, and then someone, or something, welcomes him.
A voice just echoes, "Welcome home, Comrade Stalin." And a single ghostly dossier floats in front of him. It's labeled in Cyrillic with his birth name.
Oh, God.
It's stamped across it in blood red ink, case #1, the Holodomor.
Wow.
The whole setup is right there. The master of the archive, the man who controlled every single record, is now just another case file.
So he's immediately faced with the Ukrainian famine, a tragedy he just dismissed as, what was it, bourgeois exaggeration.
And that's the core of the torment. It forces a shift from the abstract to the intensely personal. You know Stalin's famous cynical line, "One death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic." Well, in the archive, there are no statistics, only tragedies.
It must feel like a physical weight, I imagine. Not just numbers, but the actual agony of it.
Every single page is a name, a story. Oksana Mikhailivna, age 7, clutching a doll. Dmytro Petrenko, shot for hiding 2 potatoes. Lydia Kovalenko, who died after eating tulip bulbs. The source says this guilt becomes a literal physical weight on him. He feels the hunger he created.
And when that file closes, it just keeps coming. Dossier number 2 floats up. The Great Purge. So if the first was about the anonymous masses, this one must be about the people he knew, the ones he betrayed personally.
It is. It's full of interrogation transcripts, photos of men he once called comrades after they'd been tortured, and worst of all, the execution lists, page after page of names, all with his signature at the bottom. Men like Bukharin, Zinoviev, Tukhachevsky.
And the source says they actually appear before him. But they don't. They don't scream at him or anything.
No, and that's what's so brilliant. They just appear as these silent witnesses. They just stare. And this turns his own defining trait, his paranoia, into a weapon against him. In life, he was always looking for enemies. Now he's surrounded by them, and he's wondering, what are they plotting? Who's watching me? And the archive just whispers back, everyone he silenced. The silence is what breaks him.
That is a truly adaptive hell. It's not just showing him the past, it's reacting to his fear. He starts seeing Berea or Yazov in the shadows.
Exactly. Fear was his greatest tool, and now it's his master. And the environment begins to morph here. It shifts into his Kunsevo dacha, but it's all wrong. The walls are pulsing like they're alive.
And this is where it shifts to his identity as a revolutionary. The portraits of Lenin on the wall. They start watching him.
And then they speak. But it's not an angry voice.
Yeah?
It's Lenin's voice, but it's calm. It's sorrowful, which is so much more devastating for Stalin. The accusation isn't about cruelty, it's about corruption. You betrayed the revolution. You turned socialism into a blood cult.
And he tries to argue back with his statistics, right? Industrial output.
He does, but the words just fall flat. There's no one left to persuade, no audience to manipulate.
Then the torture gets even more personal. It's not just politics now. It's about his complete inability to connect, to feel. The ghosts of his wives appear.
Yes, first still and say. Kato's Fenitz, his first wife. She doesn't call him a monster. She calls him an emotional coward. She asked him why he never really grieved for her, why he just buried himself in power to avoid his own pain.
And then Nadezhda Aluyeva, his second wife, who killed herself, she appears holding the gun.
And her insight is just terrifyingly sharp. She tells him he made tenderness a weakness, that he was more afraid of his own emotions than he ever was of a political rival. He built a fortress and called it strength, but it was just a prison.
So his punishment is total isolation inside the consequences of his own choices. The corridors fill with these liquid mirrors, right, showing him every version of himself he destroyed, the young idealist, the pious boy.
And he has to see the distance between what he could have been and the monster he chose to become. And then, to make the isolation even worse, the future appears. Nikita Khrushchev. But he's not the sycophant Stalin knew. This is Khrushchev, the reformer, delivering the secret speech, shouting that Stalin killed the revolution from within.
Oh, wow. For a man who demanded total, unwavering loyalty, to see his own man tear down his legacy right after he's gone, that has to be unbearable.
It's the beginning of the end for his self-justification. It leads right into the next chamber and the ultimate rejection.
The room with Lenin's final testament, the letter he spent his life suppressing.
And its contents are, for him, a kind of spiritual death. Lenin basically disowns him. He writes that Stalin twisted his words and turned the entire movement into a cult of personality. For Stalin, who based his entire identity on being Lenin's true disciple, this rejection is worse than any physical pain. The very foundation of his life's work just evaporates.
From there, it just gets more epic in scale. The tribunal of paper. The room looks like the Supreme Soviet, but it's filled with millions of his victims.
And they don't say a word. They just rise one by one, each holding a copy of their own execution order that he signed. And they walk past and place it on a stack at his feet.
He's literally being buried by his own bureaucracy. He's drowning in the paperwork of his crimes.
He is. He's choking on it, clawing at it, but it just keeps mounting. There is no air, only paper. The system he perfected is now, quite literally, crushing him.
And this leads to the deepest irony, doesn't it? The gulag made of paper.
Yes, the chamber transforms. It's a labor camp, but the barbed wire is made from his decrees. The barracks are built from censored books.
And the prisoners are all him, countless versions of himself suffering the one fate he imposed on millions, to be unheard, erased, forgotten.
Exactly. And the archive just keeps rubbing it in. It projects images from the future, Khrushchev's speech, his statues being torn down all across Europe, the collapse of the USSR in 1991.
I think the biggest humiliation, though, has to be the indifference. The archive shows his museum in Georgia turned into a cafe.
And worse, a viral video, something like top 10 dictators who were just mean uncles. It's the irrelevance, the casual modern mockery for a man who sacrificed everything to build this monolithic legacy being turned into a meme. That is a fate worse than fire.
So he hits the final circle of his hell. And it's just an office, pure bureaucracy. He's stripped of his name, his rank. He's just clerk #0000000.
And he's trapped there for eternity. Processing forms, they're all appeals from the people he killed. Requests for their property back, requests for their cases to be reconsidered. And his only job forever is to take his stamp and mark every single one denied. He's the machine he created, forced to confess his crimes with every single meaningless, repetitive motion.
But there's one last thing, a sound. In the deepest part of the archive, you can hear laughter.
This is the real turning point of the whole narrative. It's not cruel laughter. It's free, uncontrolled. He follows the sound and finds the souls of his victims, the poets, the artists, the dissidents. Anna Akhmatova, Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
And they aren't judging him, they're celebrating, dancing. Their joy, their unbreakable humanity is the one thing he could never, ever control.
That's his true punishment. One of the poets tells him, you built walls to cage the truth, but it just crawled through the cracks and grew stronger. Their survival, their spirit. That's his final defeat.
So after all that,
Right.
what does this narrative really say about power?
It's just a masterpiece of poetic justice, really. He ruled by fear, so he's condemned to eternal fear. He denied the humanity of others, so he loses his own.
And the story never offers him a way out. There's no redemption possible. Why is that?
Because redemption requires repentance, right? And the source is clear. Stalin never admitted he was wrong. He saw it all as necessary. In the logic of this universe, if you don't admit your error, you are chained to it forever. He spent his life saying, "My will be done," and in the end, that's exactly what he got. Eternal self-will, eternal isolation.
It's a story of how power without empathy just consumes itself. His greatest enemy wasn't some political rival. It was his own internal fear, fear of weakness, fear of being forgotten. And that fear built his eternal prison.
Exactly. And while history moves on, the narrative suggests that the final judgment isn't handed down from on high. It comes from conscience, from the quiet, unbreakable voices of those who remember. It leaves you with a thought, doesn't it? If a dictator's greatest weapon is erasure, the destruction of identity, then what enduring human trait, whether it's art or humor or just simple joy, was the one true key to freedom, even in the face of absolute terror?